grateful to the opportunity to speak on the government bill here in the first reading, and I want to simply reflect a little bit on where we've come from. You'll recall, Mr. Speaker, that on November 17, 2008, Martin Johnson, you may have read it, I don't know, Martin Johnson of the New Zealand Herald wrote an article which says, "ACT has a radical agenda for local government, but party leader Rodney Hyde is keeping his lips sealed. ACT wants councils to privatise their commercial activities and to supply water on a fully commercial basis. But Mr Hyde would not identify yesterday which activities should be privatised or discuss these policies at all." Later in that same month in 2008, Brian Woodman of the New Zealand Herald wrote another article which says, "Hyde and local government are scary mix. There are many," and he quotes, "there are many in local government scratching their heads after the appointment of ACT leader Rodney Hyde as Minister of Local Government and wondering on earth what on earth they did to upset Prime Minister John Key so much that Mr Hyde was appointed the Minister of Local Government." And then it goes on, Mr Speaker, in that top of the scorched earth local government policy list Mr Hyde was elected on was that local government, quote, "local government will be required to shed its commercial activity, thereby eliminating the need to separate regulatory and commercial functions between regional and local and regional councils." Mr Speaker, you will also be aware that Mr Hyde, as the Minister of Local Government, has rammed through the implementation of the Auckland Super City. And you'll recall also that the government said that they would consult widely with the people of Auckland once the Royal Commission would release its report, and that was never done. You'll recall also, sir, that earlier this year, Mr Hyde, in support of this government, also removed 14 elected councillors of the Environment Canterbury Regional Council, and that regional council will not have the ability to replace those elected officials with further elected officials in this year's local body elections. They are being replaced by politically appointed members by this minister and this government. And I thought it's useful, Mr Speaker, to sort of lay the background to what is happening with regard to local government, what is yet to be occur with the final bill coming through for the Auckland Super City, and now we have this bill here, the Local Government Act 2002 Amendment Bill. And I want to support what my colleagues have said, that we in Labour are opposing this bill, and there are a variety of reasons why, sir. Let me begin by saying that in just quickly going through the Act, there are a range of areas of concerns that I want to bring to the attention of the House. And I'm hopeful that the people of Auckland and the people of Canterbury area and everyone who is passionate about local government will take the time to be able to make submissions on this particular bill. Clause 5, sir, makes reference to core services. And the bill lists, and I quote, "A local authority must have particular regard to the following core services," and then lists network infrastructure, public transport services, solid waste collection and disposal, the avoidance of mitigation of natural hazards, and other community infrastructure. And the question that people who are working in the business improvement districts, and I know in particular in Manukau, will be asking, is economic development a core service of councils? Are the business of Business Improvement Association district, are they core services? What defines, will this bill specifically, what would I say?
What would you say?
Would they put a circle around so that nothing else, that there's a limitation of what is regarded as core services? And why I'm saying that, Mr. Speaker, is currently all local governments and communities are able to participate and identify what local core services are through the annual plan process. That's when communities come forward to their council and identify what their needs are, what it is that is important to them. For example, only last month, sir, many of our, throughout New Zealand, all of us, I suspect, will have celebrated Anzac Day. That event, sir, is organised generally by community boards. They are funded by council, and our local event in Margaret Bridge, which is organised by the good Reverend Les Dixon of the Anglican Church there, he estimates that the council puts in about $10,000 to pay for that local event. Now, they are asking, is Anzac celebrations and other events that local governments currently now support, is that core service? And I have a suspicion, sir, in talking with members of the local government fraternity, that we could see a situation where lawyers or local governments are using lawyers to try and define what a core service is. Now, if this bill is designed to try and reduce compliance costs, to reduce the rates burden on ratepayers, then I would say to you, sir, that I don't believe that this particular bill is going to be achieving that. If councillors will need to go out, seek consultation and seek the advice of legal advisors to try and identify what is a core service and what is not a core service, and what are the current activities that communities currently receive will or will not be part of local governments in the future. I want to go to community consultations, Clause 8. There are several amendments of this government bill which now seems to me, sir, to take away the opportunity that is currently available to members of the public to be able to provide input into the long-term council community plan. If on the one hand the bill is saying that it wants transparency and it wants to be accountable, why on earth are we then removing the particular part where the wider community are participating and are holding local governments to account, when the removal of participation by communities is so explicit in this particular part of the bill? I don't know. And I'm hoping that people will consult and will be able to raise their concern. The risk is that community considerations are not given full and fair hearing at key stages of the process with this particular clause here. Now that you've rung the bell, I want to come now to the area which the Minister did not spend a lot of time on, and you have to really consider, sir, that this is probably the most significant part of the bill on partnerships, on the private sector, on removing, on being able to make it easier for the private sector to take control of an asset, to take control of income stream that comes from the water industry. He spent so little time on it, but yet that is probably the most significant part of the particular bill. My colleague George Hawkins says, if these contracts are going to be for 35 years, you imagine, sir, at the ratepayer, who is now age 65, they do not get a say in what happens to those particular contracts until they are 100. A ratepayer now at 35 or 40 does not have a say for the next 35 years, could be dead at 70 if they're Pacific or Māori, will not have a say in how the private sector will be running the water industry with this particular clause. It's a weird situation, sir, that the bill aims to try and reduce compliance costs, but on the other hand then adds on other compliance costs, but on the one hand, it says it wants more transparency, but on another hand, it tries to keep a lot of the decision-making that will be made by the private sector away from the community so that the community are not participating.